Okay,
We begin.
We'll start.
So, good morning, everyone, and welcome all to this session today by Dr. Narendran T. And Dr. Bala Subramaniam Karthik would be introducing our speaker for the day. Thank you all for joining early because we had done this change in the schedule at the last minute. But thank you all for joining. Over to you, Karthik.
Sure. Thanks, Prachi, and very good morning to all. And I'm happy to welcome our today's speaker, Narendran Tiruthi from NBA, National Biodiversity Authority, Chennai. This talk would be a follow-up of yesterday's talk. Some of you are asking what are the legal complications or what are the punishments associated with this uh, uh, the biodiversity related law. So Dr. Narendran would emphasize more on the law, particularly intellectual property rights associated with biodiversity. He's a technical officer and he heads the intellectual property rights section at NBA. And so he has been ambassador of spreading knowledge about intellectual biodiversity rights and legal aspects of particularly work of NBA. And he had delivered lectures in multiple forums, both international and national forums. So he's also a very good teacher of intellectual property rights, and he has many publications on national and international journals on this topic. With this small introduction, I welcome Narendran for this today's session. Narendran, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Before I begin, I would like to thank the organizers, especially Karthik Bala sir, for giving us this opportunity. Because the biggest hurdle we see in the implementation of the Act is the lack of awareness among various stakeholders. So we use every opportunity to sensitize the stakeholders. So an opportunity to interact with entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs and researchers is a big opportunity for us to sensitize them about the Biological Diversity Act. So I'll be speaking about biodiversity governance and interface with intellectual property rights. So in case my voice is not audible or if my presentation is not visible, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. If you have any questions that we can keep towards the end, or you can put in the chat box so that we can discuss after my presentation ends. So you know that there is a huge demand for bio-based products across the world now. So there are a lot of industries that use biological products for developing new products and developing new inventions. If you look at any sector, whether it is pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, cosmetics, agriculture sector, Indian system of medicine, foods and beverage, or in academic research, there is a lot of research going on in about the various components of biodiversity. So when I say the various components of biodiversity, it includes everything that you can perceive as part of biodiversity, whether it's a microorganism, whether it's a plant species, whether it's an animal species, or everything that you can see around you is part of biodiversity. So there is a lot of research going on biological based products. This is especially due to the huge demand that is there for bio-based products. So when a product is being advertised, for example, if you take a pharmaceutical product, which is being advertised as a bio-based product, then there is a huge demand for it. Similar is the case with cosmetic products, or you take any other sector. So there is a huge demand for bio-based products in the modern world. And also we look for solutions in the nature. So whenever we come across any problem, so for example, if there is a challenge to find a drug for a particular disease, then immediately there will be a lot of research going on to find out whether any solution can be taken from the nature itself. So there is a lot of research on different components of biodiversity, which is happening across the world. So we know that our country is rich in biodiversity. So of course, from researchers across the world, we'll be looking into India and taking resources from India for doing research and developing products. So we have to see that many times what happens is there will be some conservers of biodiversity. For example, if you take a village community that is conserving the biodiversity around them, or you take the example of a tribal community. So they have contributed to the conservation of biodiversity. Similar is the case with a traditional knowledge holder. So you might be heard about a different traditional knowledge. So there will be a tribal community or there will be a village community who has a traditional knowledge. So the traditional knowledge will give a lead to the particular bioresource and its use. So for example, if I'm trying to do research to find a drug for a particular disease, so when I search the traditional knowledge literatures, or if I does a survey to find out whether there is any traditional knowledge related to that particular disease, so I may get some lead suggesting that one community has used this particular biological resource as a cure for this disease or to prevent that disease. So from that, I'll take a lead, and that will help me to identify a particular biological resource. And when I do advanced study, I may be able to develop a medicine out of it. So this is how research happens in biodiversity related products. So if you look at the patent statistics, what we see is there is an increasing trend in biotechnology patenting. So in 2000, I'm showing statistics from 2018. So it shows that there is a 11% increase in the number of PCT applications being filed in biotechnology sector. So just as I said, like just as we can see that there is an increased demand for bio-based products, there is also an increase in the patenting on biotechnology-based inventions. So what we can see is there is an intersect between biodiversity and intellectual property rights. So we know that these are two ever opposing philosophies. One is biodiversity conservation, where we have to take into account the interest of traditional knowledge holders, the village communities that conserve the resource, and the general public. But at the same time, there is an intellectual property rights as well, where the interest of the knowledge holder, the interest of the patentee is protected. So it is this interest, this intersect that makes this topic very interesting. So whenever a component of biodiversity is taken for research and a product or an invention is developed, and once the patent is filed, it becomes property of the patentee. So if I take patent over a bio-based products, then I will get that exclusive ownership to make, use, sell that invention. So in that case, even that original conserver of the resource or the knowledge holder may be deprived of the benefits. So if you look at the different categories of intellectual property rights, I hope that all of you are familiar about the different categories of intellectual property rights, like patent, copyright, industrial design, semiconductor chips, etc. So for the purpose of today's discussion, we will be concentrating more on patent and plant variety protection, because these are the two different categories of intellectual property right, which closely intersect with the biodiversity. Because when we look at the Biological Diversity Act 2002, it uses the word invention. So invention is mainly patent. So it cannot be a copyright, it cannot be industrial design, etc. And plant variety protection also has its relevance because it uses biodiversity. So these we will, for the purpose of today's discussion, we will be limiting to patent and plant variety protection. So at international level, it is a well-established principle that states have sovereign right to establish rules on how natural resources and assets are used. So if biological diversity or a component of biodiversity is existing within the territory of India, our country has the sovereign right to determine the way in which it can be used. This is also recognized by Convention on Biodiversity. So when you take a biological resource, it is having a physical part and it is also having an intangible part. So you can see that in this slide, like when you take, for example, if you take turmeric. So turmeric as a physical resource, it has some significance. It can be sold, it can be used for making some products. It is possible to put into different uses. So it is having a physical part. But at the same time, it is also having an intangible part wherein there is genetic information involved. And sometimes that intangible part may be in the form of knowledge associated with the utilization of that resource. If you take the example of traditional knowledge, we can see that the cosmetic use of turmeric is a kind of traditional knowledge. So that knowledge is the intangible part. Also, it can be in the form of scientific knowledge. It can be in the form of digital sequence information. So the resource is having a physical part. Also, it is also having an intangible part, the tangible and the intangible part of the resource. So now we have different legislations in India to deal with the tangible part of the resource. So we have the Wildlife Protection Act, we have the Forest Act, and we have the Environment Protection Act. We have different environmental legislations at the central and the state level to deal with the physical part and how the resource can be used if it is from the forest or protected areas. Similar to that, Biological Diversity Act, its relevance is that it deals mainly with this intangible part of the resource. So if you look at the international legal regime, from the Convention on Biodiversity, Convention of Biodiversity established that countries have sovereign right to determine the way in which the genetic resources existing in their territory can be accessed. So if the resource is in the territory of India, its utilization shall be in accordance with the national legislation in India. So if the resource is in India, then we have the Biological Diversity Act. So if the resource is used for doing research or commercial utilization or for any other purpose, then it shall be in accordance with the legislation in India, that is the Biological Diversity Act. So after the coming into force of the Convention on Biodiversity, the Nagoya Protocol at international level harmonized the legislative and the legal regime with regard to how the different countries can address the issue of transboundary use of biological resources. So for example, if the biological resource from India is being utilized, for example, in European Union, so that how can we enforce that the Indian legislation is followed by a user in European Union? So in that case, the Nagoya Protocol resolves this issue by ensuring that all the countries shall take appropriate legislative, administrative, and policy measures to ensure that the access to genetic resource and traditional knowledge shall be subject to the prior informed consent of the party providing such resource. So if you take the example of a resource which has been exported from India and it goes to the European Union. So if a company in European Union is doing research or using that particular resource for commercial utilization, they shall ensure that the use of that resource is in accordance with the Biological Diversity Act. So if they want to do research, they have to take permission from National Biodiversity Authority. It is irrespective of the country in which that company operates. So whether it's in European Union or any other country, country to which is party to Nagoya Protocol, that company has to ensure that they comply with the legislative measures provided in India. So similar to that, Nagoya Protocol also insists that all the countries shall have user country measures and all the countries shall also designate checkpoints. So user country measures means, for example, European Union has a user country measures where they say that whenever the resource is utilized, that whoever is the user has to follow the legal procedures of the provider country. So if the resource is originating from India, so the legislative provisions in India has to be complied before the resource is utilized. So I'm referring to two other conferences and conventions happening at international level, because we need to understand that after the coming into force of the Convention on Biological Diversity and also the Nagoya Protocol, there are a lot of developments happening at international level. So for example, if you take the WIPO IGC on intellectual property and genetic resource, what we can see is there is a lot of discussions happening at international level to finalize an agreement or an international legal instrument for the protection of traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, and genetic resources. So this WIPO IGCs, I hope all of you might have heard about World Intellectual Property Organization. So which administers all the almost all the intellectual property related treaties. So this IGC or the Intergovernmental Committee is primarily looking at linkages with patent system, establishing a disclosure of source procurement, and defensive protection of traditional knowledge, genetic resource, and traditional cultural expressions. So I'm just referring to this just to sensitize you that there is a lot of developments happening at international level. So similar to this, we can also refer to the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is recently concluded between ASEAN countries, Australia, Japan, China, etc., of which India is not a party. So here also, if you refer, there is reference to protection of traditional knowledge within the patent regime. So why I'm saying all this is, when I started my presentation, I told you about an intersect between biodiversity and intellectual property rights. So this is there is a lot of conflicts at international level on how to address this intersect. So if you look from the CBD or the Nagoya Protocol point of view, the international legal mechanism says that whenever the resource is utilized, it shall be in accordance of the legal measures of the provider country. But when we look at the patent treaties or the WIPO IGC or the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, so where intellectual property gets more prominence compared to the biodiversity interest. So, but at the same time, there is a lot of developments happening at international level to bring consensus in this issue and to provide for a comprehensive legal framework wherein the interest of biodiversity conservers or the traditional knowledge holders can also be protected within the patent regime. So now we come to the legal framework in India. In India, at the central level, we have the Biological Diversity Act, which was enacted in 2002. So after India became signatory to the Convention on Biological Diversity, in order to give legal recognition to those principles in India, we enacted the Biological Diversity Act 2002 by the Parliament. And we know that India is having a federal polity. So there are central government, there is central government, and also there is state governments. So some of the powers under the Biological Diversity Act 2002 is given to the central government, and some of the functions and powers are given to the state governments. So because of this, there is a central biological diversity rules, which was enacted in 2004. And also each state government has promulgated their own rules. So under the Biological Diversity Act, it provides for a decentralized biodiversity governance mechanism, under which some of the powers and functions are administered by the central government and some of the powers and functions are administered by the state government. So because of this, there is a central rule, and also there will be different state rules in each state. And there are different notifications issued under the biological diversity in the form of the ABS guidelines 2014 and also the ITPJRFA notification, NTC notification, which I will explain in the coming slides. So under the Biological Diversity Act, the central regulatory body which was established is National Biodiversity Authority, which is headquartered in Chennai. So it's established as a statutory body to implement the Biological Diversity Act at the central level. And there will be, in each state, there will be a state biodiversity board. And in each union territory, there will be a union territory biodiversity council. So as I told, the Biological Diversity Act 2002 provides for a decentralized biodiversity governance mechanism. So because of this, some of the powers are administered by the National Biodiversity Authority at the central level. And in each state, there will be a state biodiversity board, which will be vested with some functions. So it is not like the state biodiversity boards functions under National Biodiversity Authority. It is not like that. Both of them are independent autonomous statutory bodies, which takes care of different functions. So whatever functions are given to National Biodiversity Authority under the Biological Diversity Act will be taken care by the National Biodiversity Authority, and state biodiversity boards are given separate functions and separate powers to deal with issues at state level. So now I will take you through the ABS cycle. So access and benefit sharing, I'm sure that from the yesterday's presentation, you all are familiar about what is access and benefit sharing. So now you can see it as a kind of a cycle. So any component of biodiversity, if it is used for research, transferring of research result, commercial utilization, biosurvey, bioutilization, obtaining of IPR. So when I say any component of biodiversity, we need to refer to the definition of biological resource given in the Biological Diversity Act. So if you look at the definition, it covers almost everything we can perceive as part of biodiversity. It includes plants, it includes animals, it includes microorganisms, their hereditary component, their genetic components. So in whatever form they are, so the definition of biological resource is very wide, so that we usually say that it covers almost everything under the sun, which is having a life. So the definition is so wide, and because of this, it expands the regulatory ambit of the Biological Diversity Act. So if any component of biodiversity is used for research, so if the research is undertaken by an Indian, then under the Biological Diversity Act, no permission is required. But if the research is going to be done by a foreigner or a foreign company or an Indian company with foreign shareholding, for example, if you are planning to start a startup, And once it is just registered as a startup and you are the only shareholder, then that means or if I'm presuming that you are an Indian. So in that case, no permission is required for doing research. But if you get some investment from a foreigner, then you becomes an Indian company with foreign shareholding. In that case, even for doing research, you need to take the permission. So if it is a purely Indian company or a purely Indian researcher, then there is no approval required for doing research. But if it is a foreigner or a foreign company or an Indian company with foreign shareholding or participation in management, then approval is required from National Biodiversity Authority for doing research. So if you are an Indian, and then as I said, there is no permission required for doing research. But once you complete the research, you are planning to transfer the research results to a foreigner. So in that case, you need to take approval from National Biodiversity Authority. So as an Indian researcher, you need not take any approval for doing research. But after doing research, you are planning to sell your research results or transfer the research results to a foreigner. In that case, you have to take permission from India. And if you plan to do any commercial utilization, so after doing research, you are planning to develop a product. So in that case, for doing commercial utilization, if you are an Indian or an Indian company, you need to take approval from the State Biodiversity Board. But if you are a foreigner or a foreign company, you need to take approval from National Biodiversity Authority. Similarly, for biosurvey and bioutilization also, if it is an Indian or an Indian company, permission has to be taken from State Biodiversity Board. If it is a foreigner or a foreign company, permission has to be taken from National Biodiversity Authority. And if you take the case of intellectual property rights, irrespective of whether it's an Indian, whether it's a foreigner, whether it's an Indian company, whether it's a foreign company, you have to take approval from National Biodiversity Authority. So when it comes to the case of intellectual property rights, both Indians, Indian companies, foreigners, foreign companies, everyone has to take approval, and the approval has to be taken from National Biodiversity Authority. So this is how the regulatory powers under the Biological Diversity Act is distributed between National Biodiversity Authority and the State Biodiversity Board. So as you can see, for certain activities, if you are an Indian or an Indian company, approval has to be taken from the State Biodiversity Board. But if you are a foreigner or a foreign company, or if you are a startup with foreign shareholding, then almost everything, all the approvals has to be taken from National Biodiversity Authority alone. So when I say this approval or the regulatory regime, don't feel that it's a hurdle for research or it's a hurdle for commercial utilization. It's a way in which the utilization of the resource is regulated so as to ensure sustainable utilization. But at the same time, now we have introduced online application facility, and the application process, the way in which approval is granted. So everything has become hassle-free now. So because of this, don't see this as a hurdle, but you see this as a contribution that you make to the biodiversity conservation. So, so all the approvals granted by either by National Biodiversity Authority or the State Biodiversity Board will be in the form of a written agreement. So the written agreement will have certain terms and conditions, which will say what are your obligations, what are your rights. All these things will be explained in the written agreement. And it will also have the benefit sharing part. So the benefit sharing will be fixed in the written agreement. So if it is for commercial utilization, I will explain to you the range in which the benefit sharing will be fixed. But for the time being, you assume that it will be in the form of a percentage, either of the annual gross ex-factory sale or of the benefits that the applicant has received. So the benefit sharing will also be part of the written agreement. And once as far as you do not make any benefit, for example, if you just apply for IPR, but you couldn't commercially utilize the intellectual property rights. For example, if the patent is rejected, or if even after the patent is granted, you are unable to commercialize the patent. In that case, you need not pay any benefit sharing. The benefit sharing arises only once you start making money. So till the time there will not be any benefit sharing, except in the case of upfront payment for the purpose of research. In all other cases, benefit sharing will arise only after you start making benefits. So once you make the benefit, that has to be given, a percentage of that has to be shared with the National Biodiversity Authority or the State Biodiversity Board as specified in the agreement. And that benefit, that fund will be used for the channeling of benefits to the benefit claimers. So if a benefit claimer is identifiable, for example, if you have taken that resource from a village community, So whatever money you share as benefit will be given to that village community. Or if that benefit claimer is not identifiable, it can be generally used for conservation and promotion of bioresource, or it can be used for socio-economic development of the areas from where the resource is accessed. So as you can see, this act as an incentive for conservation. So if it is given to the benefit claimer, it will incentivize a scheme for contributing to the conservation more. And if benefit claimer is not identifiable, it can be used as a finance generating mechanism for conservation. So this is how the cycle becomes complete. Now you can see that the regulatory measures ensure that utilization happens only in a sustainable manner, so that it will not lead to the depletion or the complete depletion of the resource. And once the access is permitted, then there will be some regulations wherein a percentage of the benefit that the user generates has to be shared back, which will again be used for initiating, or which will be used for starting conservation measures. So access and benefit sharing is an internationally accepted legal obligation for all those who access and utilize biological resource or associated knowledge. So as a concept, ABS facilitates access in a regulated manner. So don't feel that it's a hurdle. It's not a prohibition on access. It's not a prohibition on research, but it facilitates access. So you are permitted to access provided you take approval under the proper regulatory scheme. It ensures sustainable utilization. So when we receive the application, we will check what quantity of the resource is going to be utilized, whether it's threatened, whether there is any conservation issues. So the sustainable utilization is always ensured and mandates benefit sharing as an obligation on the part of the user. So once the approval is granted, we will also upload the information into the ABS clearinghouse portal. So the CBD Secretariat, the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, is having a secretariat based in Montreal. So they have a portal called the ABS clearinghouse portal, which is available publicly through internet. So whenever an approval is granted, that information will be uploaded into the ABS clearinghouse portal, and an internationally recognized certificate will be generated. So that internationally recognized certificate will be given to the applicant. For example, if you are planning to start a company, and you do some research or you take some approval from National Biodiversity Authority for taking some patent. Once you apply, we will process your application, and once it is approved, we will also issue an internationally recognized certificate of compliance. So that internationally recognized certificate of compliance will give you an added advantage when you are trying to secure investment from abroad, or when you try to commercialize your patent, or when you try to license your patent to a foreign company. You can tell that you also possess an internationally recognized certificate of compliance. So, as I already explained, any invention which are based on research on a biological resource obtained from India, or information on a biological resource obtained from India, requires the prior approval of National Biodiversity Authority. So if you are developing an invention based after doing research, you develop an invention. So you may sometimes you may have directly used the biological resource. For example, if you have taken the biological resource, you might have procured it from market, or sourced it from community, or sourced it from trader, and you do research, then you develop an invention. Then before applying for patent, you have to take prior approval from NBA. So this is what Section 6 of the Biological Diversity Act 2002 says. So before you apply for the patent, you have to take approval from National Biodiversity Authority. Sometimes you may not have directly tested the biological resource. Instead, you might have used only the information on a biological resource. So even if you have used only the information also, prior approval from National Biodiversity Authority is mandatory. So many times we get a lot of queries asking whether the applicant from applicants, they telling that they are confused whether they have to take approval from National Biodiversity or not. So usually, and also many times what happens is startup companies or inventors or researchers, what they usually do is they will apply for patent without taking the approval. So the problem is, once the patent is granted, then it becomes a violation of the Biological Diversity Act. So for example, if you apply for a patent in India, now it's also possible in India that you can get a patent within a year. So in abroad also, maybe it's possible. So what happens is, you apply for a patent, immediately you may not be knowing that NBA approval is required, because you are not aware of the provisions. So in that case, what happens is you apply in India and abroad. Indian Patent Office will definitely prompt you, telling that before the grant of the patent, they will tell that you have to get clearance from National Biodiversity Authority. But foreign patent offices may not insist that. So if you apply for a patent in US or Europe, you may get the patent within 1 or 2 years. So once you violate the provisions of the Biological Diversity Act, it becomes very difficult. So violation of the provisions of Biological Diversity Act is a punishable offense. So in that case, your application will be treated as a violation case. So we always advise that before you apply for a patent, you apply to National Biodiversity Authority for taking the approval. Even in case you have some doubts as to whether your your patent application requires the approval or not, still you can try applying to National Biodiversity Authority. And if approval is not required, we will grant you a no objection certificate. And if approval is required, then we will issue an approval telling that you have to sign the ABS agreement. So we always advise that even in case you have a doubt, it's better to apply to National Biodiversity Authority and check with us whether approval is required or not. So similar to the measures under the Biological Diversity Act, there are measures under the Patent Act also to ensure that the source and geographical origin of the biological material is disclosed in the patent specification. So if you have already studied the patent procedure, then you may be knowing that when you file a patent application, in the specification itself, you have to mention the source and geographical origin of the biological material used. So if you are using any biological material in the invention, then the source and geographical origin has to be mentioned in the specification itself. So once you mention it in the specification, it becomes a proof that your invention requires approval from the National Biodiversity Authority. So if you incorrectly or wrongfully disclose, then it becomes a ground for pre-grant opposition, post-grant opposition, or revocation of patent. So we always advise that you correctly mention the geographical origin and the source of the material you used in the specification itself. Otherwise, it will lead to a lot of complications in the future. So I'm just showing you an example of how the source of the material is explained in the specification. Here they have used Withania somnifera. So they're telling that they have taken it from Ramakrishna Mission Ashram, Kolkata, West Bengal. So this is how it is mentioned in the specification. So whenever you use a biological resource in the invention, then that source has to be mentioned in the specification. So before I move ahead, I will give you a glimpse of how the traditional knowledge is protected under the Indian legal framework. So traditional knowledge, there are three kind of protection mechanisms or measures related to traditional knowledge. One is documentation of traditional knowledge in the form of traditional knowledge digital library and the People's Biodiversity Register. And I hope all of you might have heard about traditional knowledge digital library, wherein the traditional knowledge which belongs to Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, Yoga is translated into 5 different international languages and is formed into a database which is set up by CSIR. So that is one form of protecting traditional knowledge. Similar to that, there is People's Biodiversity Register under the Biological Diversity Act. So under the Biological Diversity Act, I have already explained to you regarding National Biodiversity Authority and the State Biodiversity Board. Similar to that, there is a Biodiversity Management Committee in every local body. So every village panchayat shall have a Biodiversity Management Committee. So one of the important functions of the Biodiversity Management Committee is to prepare People's Biodiversity Registers. So the People's Biodiversity Registers will contain information on innovations, traditions, folk, ecological knowledge and practices. So it will be a complete document with regard to the biodiversity existing in that village area, and also the traditional knowledge which different local communities or traditional knowledge holders possess. So People's Biodiversity Register will be a document containing the full information about the biological diversity in that particular area and the traditional knowledge. So this provides for the documentation of traditional knowledge and its protection. So far more than 2 lakh People's Biodiversity Registers has been prepared across the country. The preparation of People's Biodiversity Registers is the function of the Biodiversity Management Committee. So in your village community, in your village panchayat or in your municipality or in your corporation also, there will be a Biodiversity Management Committee, and they will be vested with this responsibility of preparing the People's Biodiversity Registers. Now, at a national level, we are in the process of converting it into a ePBR database. So this is being done at national level now. So also there is a defensive protection for traditional knowledge under the Patent Act. So traditional knowledge as such is completely excluded from patentability. So I hope all of you are familiar with this, that traditional knowledge as such cannot be patented in India. But of course, if there is an improvisation or you get a lead from the traditional knowledge and you make a different product, or you make it, uh, or you develop a different process, then it may be patentable. So, uh, anticipation due to existence of TK is a ground for pre-grant and post-grant opposition. So TK, traditional knowledge as such, cannot be patented. But if, as I said, if you are developing a new process or you are developing a new product after taking lead from the traditional knowledge, it may be patentable. It can be decided only on a case-to-case basis. So even in that case, if you have used traditional knowledge, it is regulated under the Biological Diversity Act. So if you have used traditional knowledge for developing a product, or you develop a process by using traditional knowledge or taking lead from traditional knowledge, then you have to apply to National Biodiversity Authority, take the prior approval, then only you shall apply for the patent. So as I told, almost all the offenses under the Act are Biological Diversity Act are punishable. So if you do research, if you do commercial utilization, if you obtain a patent without taking prior approval, all of these are punishable offenses under the Biological Diversity Act. So all these offenses can lead to an imprisonment of 5 years and a fine of up to 10 lakh rupees. So these are seen as offenses of serious nature, and all offenses under the Biological Diversity Act are cognizable and non-bailable. That is why we always try to sensitize researchers, startup innovators, so that they become familiar about the provisions of Biological Diversity Act, and they will be very, very careful when they utilize biological resource for research, commercial utilization, or for obtaining of patents. So cognizance of offenses, all these are cognizable offenses, and the Act also provides who is the competent authority to file a complaint. And now I will go ahead to the processing of Form 3 application. So if you are planning to take a patent after doing research on a biological resource, you need to apply to National Biodiversity Authority in Form 3. So almost 86% of the application NBA receives is Form 3, which is for taking intellectual property rights. We get applications from India as well as abroad. So a lot of foreign companies, foreigners also apply to National Biodiversity Authority for getting taking patents. So now from 2017 onwards, we have the ABS e-filing portal. So now all the applications before National Biodiversity Authority has to be filed online through the ABS e-filing portal. You can note down the website, or you can refer to our website where a link to the e-filing portal is provided. So all the applications before National Biodiversity Authority now has to be filed online. It's a very user-friendly portal, and you can refer to the instructions to the applicant, user manual, and also know your application wizard is also there, which will take you through the application process in a hassle-free manner. So for Form 3, for applying for intellectual property rights, you have to pay a fee of ₹500. The fee can also be paid online. So I have shown you the fee for different activities. So research, of course, you need. Form 1 is only for foreign companies and foreign individuals. So if you are an Indian researcher or an Indian startup with no foreign shareholding, then Form 1 is not applicable for you. You do not take any approval for doing research. So, but maybe if you're planning to do commercial utilization, you have to apply to the State Biodiversity Board in the appropriate form. But there is no approval required from National Biodiversity Authority. But if you are planning to take an intellectual property right, you are planning to file for a patent, then you have to apply in Form 3. The fee provided is ₹500. The fee can be paid online, and you can apply online. So once we receive the application, a preliminary scrutiny will be done by the ABS desk. So they will now, as I told, now all the applications we are receiving through online. So once we receive the application, we'll go through the application, and a preliminary scrutiny will be done. And after that, we will do a legal and scientific review to find out whether the applicant has complied with all the legal and scientific requirements. So the exact name of the species has to be mentioned, and the quantity has to be mentioned, and the source from which it was procured has to be mentioned. So even if it is from a trader, you have to mention the name and address of the trader. If you have collected it from wild, then the location, exact location along with GPS coordinates has to be given. And the scientific name also has to be accurate. Scientific name and also the common name also has to be given. And from the legal purview, if you have already applied for a patent, you need to give the details. If you are not applied, then you need to give only the title and a small abstract. because we are sure that you may also don't want to lose the novelty of the application. So you may also be, it may also be difficult for you to disclose the complete details, but we need only minimal details as to what the invention is. So a small abstract will be fine for us if you are not applied for the patent. If you have already applied, you can give the reference number and other details. And then if required, we will have a consultation with the State Biodiversity Board and also an expert committee if required. And once the consultation and with the State Biodiversity Board and the expert committee is done, then a decision will be taken whether to approve or reject the application. So once we decide to reject the application, a rejection letter will be sent to you, but almost 99% of the cases will be approved. So once it is decided to approve the case, then a draft agreement will be sent to the applicant. So the draft agreement will be sent through all the communications of National Biodiversity Authority are through online. So you will get an email along with the soft copy of the draft agreement. So the draft agreement has to be executed in stamp paper. You have to prepare 2 stamp papers, and then it has to be sent back to NBA through post. So once we receive it, the competent authority in NBA will examine it and signs the agreement. That constitutes the approval of NBA. So approval of NBA will be in the form of an agreement. And once the approval is granted, then that information will be uploaded into the ABS clearinghouse portal, and the internationally recognized certificate of compliance will be generated. So finally, you will get the IRCC, internationally recognized certificate of compliance. If you will be sent to you in your email, and the agreement will be sent to you through post. So this is how the application processing and processing with regard to intellectual property rights happen in NBA. So maximum time limit that is provided under the Act is 90 days. But usually it will not take more than, I think those who have already applied with NBA may be knowing, like it may not take much more than 30 days now. So I'll just show you the scientific examination checklist where we will ask for the details of the biological resource, common name, scientific name, parts used, source has to be mentioned, whether it's from the wild, culture, trader, or any other source. Place of access also has to be mentioned. And also you have to mention whether it's rare, endangered, threatened. So these information, if you give well in advance, it will become very easy for us to process the application. And the legal examination checklist will check whether the applicant's name and address, everything is given correctly, and all the legal details are given in the correct manner. So now I'll take you through the benefit sharing provisions. So benefit sharing provision for intellectual property rights will be ranging from 0.2 to 5%. So if the applicant himself commercializes, for example, if you are a startup and you have developed the invention and you are planning to make the product by yourself, so in that case, it will be 0.2 to 1% of the annual ex-factory gross sale of the product minus government taxes. So after minusing government taxes, the annual ex gross factory sale is taken, and from that it may range to 0.2 to 1%. Mostly it will be 0.2%, most of the inventions. But if you are using any traditional knowledge or in such cases only, or if you are using any rare or endangered species only, it will go up to 1%. Almost all the cases, we usually keep it as very minimum percentage. So it will be mostly 0.2%. And if you are not yourself commercializing it, but instead you are assigning or licensing the patent, so in that case, it will range from 3 to 5%. Or if you are licensing it, it may vary to 2.2 to 5% of the royalty. So this is how the benefit sharing range is fixed under the ABS guidelines issued in 2014. So it's very minimal, as you can see. If you yourself is commercializing, it will be only 0.2% of the annual ex-factory gross sale of the product. But if in case you are licensing, it will be 3 to 5%. Or if you are receiving any royalty, it will be between 2 to 5%. So timeline, I'll just show you, because now during the last 2-3 years, we have improvised the application processing mechanism. And now almost everything is being done through EOP software of National Informatics Center. So because of that, you can see that almost majority of the application we were able to process within a period of maximum 2 months. So before I conclude my presentation, I'll take you through some common mistakes that are made by the applicants before applying to NBA. So in case if you are planning to apply for NBA approval in future, you can take care of these things. That's why I'm telling this. So many times there will be a mismatch of applicant's name in the Form 3 and the patent. So if the patent application is filed in the name of 3 people, then all the 3 names has to be mentioned in the Form 3 application before NBA also. There could be 5 or 6 or 7 inventors. That doesn't matter for us. We usually don't check the name of inventors. What matters for us is only the name of the applicant in the patent application. So if there is 2 applicants in the patent application, then those 2 names has to be mentioned in the Form 3 application also. So for example, if the patent application is named in the name of a company or in the name of your university, so in that case, Form 3 application also has to be filed in the name of your university. So in that case, if many times what happens is if some researcher is doing it, the patent application would have been filed in the name of university. So as the researcher is pursuing it, what he may do is he may apply to NBA in his own name, which may not be possible. So in case even if you are pursuing, what you can do is you can get an authorization from the registrar or the principal or the head of the department. And using that, you can file the Form 3 application in the name of your university. And so that the contact number or the email address, you can give your email ID. And ownership transfer. Many times what happens is startup companies may transfer the patents to one or two different entities. So because of it's seen as a way of attracting investment. So what they will do is they will once they file for the patent, they may transfer the ownership. So if an ownership transfer has happened, that has to be explained. That has to be full details has to be given in the application itself. And lack of information regarding patenting. So many times if patent has already been filed, that information has to be given, because once we receive the application, we will also do a search to find out whether patent application is already filed. So in that case, if you find out, then it becomes an issue. So if you already filed for the patent, or if you have filed in India or in any foreign country, those details also has to be clearly given. Legal error. So if there is a legal error, for example, if one of the applicants in the patent is no more. So in that case, if a legal error is applying, so in that case, that legal error certificate and other proof also has to be given. Mismatch in title. So there will be many times we see that there is a variation in title of the patent application on the Form 3. So if it is a minor variation, it is fine for us because the patent title can be changed at any time. We also understand that. But if it's a big variation, then it becomes an issue. Scientific names, only sometimes only local or common name of the biological resource will be mentioned in the application. This also leads to some issues. So as far as possible, you have to give complete scientific name and common name. Use of additional bioresource. So if you have used 10 biological resource in the invention, then all those biological resources has to be named in Form 3 also. Sometimes what we see is sometimes only 2-3 biological resources will be mentioned in the Form 3, which leads to an issue. So we always advise that if you have used 10 biological resource, you give all the 10 biological resource details in the Form 3 application. And use of extracts and powders. Extracts and powders are also treated as biological resource. So if you have used only turmeric extract, sometimes you may feel that it doesn't require approval. But even oils, extracts, powders, all are treated as biological resource under the Act. So in that case, even if you have used only extract or powder, still it is always advisable to give full particulars in the Form 3 application and take the prior approval from National Biodiversity Authority. So there are certain exemptions. Human genetic material is completely exempted. So when I said about the definition of biological resource, I explained to you that it covers almost everything that is having life, but it doesn't include human genetic material. So if you used human genetic material for research, then approval is not required. But if you are, for example, if you have taken a virus or any parasite organism from a human body, that requires approval. But if you have used only human genetic material, then approval is not required. Similarly, you might have seen about the normally traded commodities notification. So there is a notification issued by the central government that certain commodities is exempted from the purview of the Biological Diversity Act for certain purposes. But this notification is not applicable for patenting. So if you are planning to apply for patent, even if it is a commodity or an item notified under normally traded commodity notification, still approval is required. Similarly, there is an ITPGRFA notification, which excludes certain of the species. Around 26,563 accessions belonging to 9 crops are presently notified in India, as does not requiring approval for the purpose of research, breeding, and training for the purpose of food and agriculture. So even in that case, if you are planning to apply for patent, NBA approval is required. So all these exemptions are not applicable for patenting. That's what I'm telling. But if you are planning to apply for a new variety registration with Plant Variety Protection Authority, then approval is not required. And if you have used a foreign biological resource, sometimes we come across such cases also. you might have used a foreign biological resource. So in that case, you can give a proof of procurement of that resource. So for example, if you can give a bill of procurement or a certificate of origin issued by that country, so based on that, we will issue a no objection certificate. Similarly, mechanical devices. So if the invention is mainly on the mechanical part of the device, then approval may not be required. So, but still, we always advise that even if you have a doubt, it is always better to apply to NBA and get a clarification, because we don't want you to fall into trouble. So sometimes your assumptions may not be correct. So in that case, it is always better to apply to NBA and check with us, because once we go through the application and we realizes that it doesn't require the approval, we will not ask you to go through the agreement process. We will instead we will issue a no objection certificate. Similarly, if the use of the biological material is only for testing purpose, then also approval may not be required. So similar to, so what now, whatever I have explained to you is the application process and the regulatory scheme of the Act. Similarly, we also encounter cases where people apply for patent without taking any approval from the Biological Diversity Act under the Biological Diversity Act. So the Biological Diversity Act 2002 also provides a provision for monitoring and opposition measures of such patents. So if you refer to section 18(4) of the Act, it provides that National Biodiversity Authority may, on behalf of central government, take any measures necessary to oppose the grant of an intellectual property right in any country outside India on any biological resource obtained from India or knowledge associated with such biological resource which is derived from India. So whenever we come across any case of biopiracy or any misuse of biological resource abroad, or if we come across any case wherein patent has been filed without taking approval from National Biodiversity Authority, we have the legal authority to oppose such grant of the patents. So, so for this, we have developed a detection strategy wherein we will periodically search for biological resources which are originating from India and which is being used for patenting across the world. So once we identify such case, we will initiate a opposition measure against such patent, and we'll also initiate prosecution measures. So now this is also being planned to be completely converted into an automatic ABS monitoring system, which is developed under the German corporation GIZ project. So once it is developed, it will be easier to detect such cases of non-compliance. That is why we usually advise that whenever you apply for a patent, even in case you have a doubt about whether approval is required or not, still it is always better to check with us and seek a clarification rather than applying without taking the approval. So far, we have taken measures in around 81 cases in various patent offices across the world, starting from European Union, European Patent Office, United States Patent Office, Canadian Patent Office, Chinese Patent Office, etc. So almost in 81 cases, we already taken measures. So I'm explaining all this just to familiarize you with the provisions of the Biological Diversity Act. So if you are using any components of biodiversity, either for research, commercial utilization, or obtaining of intellectual property rights, you need to be aware of the provisions of the Biological Diversity Act. Certain activities, being an Indian citizen or being an Indian startup company, you may not require the approval, but certain activities may require the approval. So it is always better to take due diligence before you do the research. So I was only talking about the requirements under the Biological Diversity Act. There will be several other legislations or several other guidelines under which you need to take the approval, or you need to follow different steps while doing research. It's always advisable to be aware of, it's always advisable to take an earnest effort to understand such provisions and take due diligence while you work in a startup company or you initiate a startup company, because whatever you do today will decide your fate tomorrow. So startup companies, this is the era of startup companies. There is a huge potential of if you have high potential innovations, that is a huge there is a high chance that you can attract a lot of investment from abroad. So in that case, if you fail to comply with the provisions and if you fall into trouble, then it will affect the future of your startup company also. Then so that's why I always advise that you follow the due diligence procedure. You take sufficient precautions before you use any component of biodiversity, either for research, commercial utilization, or obtaining of patents. So with this, I'm concluding my presentation. I'm extremely sorry for rushing you through different slides, because I have another meeting at 10:30. That's why I was going quickly through some of the slides. If you have any questions, you can ask now, or you can put in the chat box. I'll be happy to answer the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Narendra. Thank you so much for this very detailed presentation. We have a lot of questions coming. So we will unmute some of the participants as per we will take a maximum maybe 5 minutes for QA.
Okay,
Shubhangi, please ask your question very quick.
Okay. Good morning, sir. Am I audible, visible?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay. So this was like a revision lecture for what Dr. Raghuram taught us yesterday. I just have one doubt. A student is doing a project on formulation. He's formulating it with the use of extract. Okay. What Dr. Narendra just said. Extracts were used to make a formulation. So when we are applying for a patent, if you're planning to apply for a patent for the formulation, extract powder was taken from the market. It was not made in the lab. So do we need to go for the regulation, NBA regulation?
Yes.
Okay. So we have to take the NBA approval first and then go for the patenting of the formulation.
You can apply for the patent, but immediately you apply for NBA clearance also, because I don't want you to lose the novelty. So you need to take the approval of NBA before the patent is granted. So if you are planning to apply for patent abroad, in that case, it is always better to take the NBA approval first. Then you can simultaneously apply for NBA approval and patent.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question from Mayuri. What is the best email of NBA to, whether if you want any doubt, what is the best email?
I will give you the email address in the chat box. You can send can send the queries in that. Also,
Sure.
email addresses are available in our website also.
Website also. Okay. I will also share the website link also. Roshni have a question on what could be the possible parameter under which NBA might reject an application?
Rejection happens only in very few cases, because one case is like if the patent is already granted. For example, sometimes the same person would have applied for patent in India and abroad, and maybe in some foreign countries he would have already got the patent. In that case, it becomes a violation. So in that case, it may be rejected. Other than that, so far we have rejected only very less cases. So rejection, there is very less chance for rejection.
Okay. So Dr. Narendran have posted IPR section's email, any patent related or any today's topic we can write to him. And here is the NBA website also I have posted. Any other questions? Any other questions? If it is not there, then we can close the meeting because he's going to rush for the next one. If there is no...
Yeah, good morning to all. Yeah, actually, I don't have a question, but I have an appreciation for sir that explained so beautifully in continuation of the yesterday's talk. And there are some questions after the yesterday's talk, but now it has been quite informatively answered. So a huge round of applause for sir.
Thanks, Anuj. Thank you. I appreciate that. So it looks like there is no other questions. So I will take this opportunity to thank Narendran and NBA for spending their valuable time and making us aware about all this legal issues related to entrepreneurship. Thank you so much, Dr. Narendran. Looking forward to having you some other time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Narendran, on behalf of Pune Knowledge Cluster also. Thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It was a really good experience for me also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Participants now will be meeting at 12 o'clock for the next session. So yes. See you all at 12.
All at 12. And special thanks to Anuj, Shubhangi, and Mayuri for keeping the session alive all the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you at 12.